share with you. So, I grew up in Dalry, and near to where I grew up, there's an area of Dalry called the Glebe. The Church of Scotland Manse is situated at the corner of the Glebe, and as boys we used to love scaling the wall of the manse garden because there was a big apple tree overhanging the garden. I maybe shouldn't admit that, but that was a magnet to boys, to young boys, climbing up and scaling those walls. And this side of the wall, there's a sort of wooded area that we love to play in, and we mess around in that. So the memory I had was scrambling under some bushes, and there in front of me, and I can picture this as if it was yesterday actually, there in front of me was a carpet of leaves. And the surface of the leaves had perished. And all that was left was the intricate veins of the leaves. It was incredible, just this carpet full of those leaves. Now I was thinking that must have been at least 45 years ago that happened. And I can reach out and touch that memory as if it was just yesterday. I honestly can. I can take you to the very spot even now and show you where that memory took place. Life, 45 years ago, and it seems as if it's gone past in a flash. Life, it's an incredible thing that we've been given. And what I believe we've come to appreciate over these weeks and months as we've spent this time together in the letter of James is the incredible way that James writes. He writes with incredible clarity, actually. He writes with powerful word pictures to help us appreciate something of what authentic Christian life is like. So, if you've been here, we've been to church, we've been thinking about what faith is like, what our speech ought to be like, what our relationships with others ought to be like, the kind of shape that those relationships ought to take. We've been thinking about all of those things in church. Scattered through the letter, there are these vivid word portraits. Picture this moment. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to look at a passage, and we've been listening and looking at it, that really is James painting on a broad canvas with broad brush strokes as he tries to capture something of what life is like. And the centerpiece of this picture is a question. What is your life? What is your life? Verse 14 of James chapter 4 has this central question. What is your life? And James wants us tonight to understand something of the brevity of life, and actually something of the necessity of living that life. Not just about how short life is, but how we invest into that life, living the life that God has given us. And as we work towards that question, just let's look at what James says about life. So, now listen. James is good at just drawing us in. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business there, and make money. Let's just stop for a moment and think about what James is saying. Because I think James is saying to us tonight from this verse, it's actually very easy for us to play God. We're very good at playing God. To live our lives day in, day out, as if we've got it all figured out. I know I do, and I think if we're all honest, we will say that very often we live our lives playing by our own rules. Look at what James says to us. We choose our own time. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow, we've got our own plans. We select our location. We'll go to this or that city. We'll limit our stay. We'll spend a year there. We'll go to Edinburgh next month, and we'll maybe go to London in July, and we work all these things out. We arrange our activity. We carry on our business. We even predict we're going to make a profit. James says we'll make money. And if we're honest, if we're really honest, we all do that in our unguarded moments. I've got this thing called life all sorted out. I've got it worked out, and it's absolutely fine. Now, what I want you to understand is, James is not arguing against good planning. He's not saying that we shouldn't plan our lives. He's not saying that we should have a kind of disorganised, haphazard view of life. James is really not saying that. James is saying to us, be very careful that you don't have mistaken confidence. Be very careful that you're not presumptuous about your life. What is your life? It's the kind of attitude that's captured brilliantly in the poem by William Ernest Henley. I'm sure most of us know this. How many times has this appeared on a year group journal post, or people tattooing it on their bodies? I am the captain of my fate, the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. How many people live their lives with that kind of mantra? Master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. James has got something to say to us tonight. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then disappears. That's a very challenging thing to reflect on. We've planned out our tomorrows, but we don't know what life will be like tomorrow. So listen to the realism with which James comes and speaks to us tonight and paints this picture for us. Here's what he says first of all. You ought to say, I have no knowledge of what tomorrow holds. I have no knowledge of what tomorrow holds. That's the first thing he says. And the second thing he says is, I have no assurance of a long life. I have no assurance of a long life. That's what he says, those two things. What is your life? And he's really saying to us, no knowledge of what tomorrow holds. Actually, no assurance of a long life. James, he's saying, and this was from my office window during the week, you're a mist, says James, that appears for a little while, then vanishes. What an amazing word picture that is, isn't it, when you think about it? A mist. We get our word atmosphere from that word in the Bible, mist. Atmosphere. One other translation puts it like this, you're a puff of smoke, you're a wisp of fog. I love, and it's probably hard to visualise this, but I do love the cold, crisp, frosty winter mornings. You know the kind of mornings when you go outside, you step outside, you breathe out, and the warm air from your lungs hits the cold air, and your breath forms this vapour in front of you. And it's there in front of you, and then it's gone in an instant. No sooner do you see it, than it's gone. James is saying that's something like the brevity of our lives. But what do we do? Now let's think about it. What do we do? Well, we go outside, we breathe in, breathe out, the air in front of us, and we try and capture it. We try and capture that air in front of us, and if we could, we'd bottle it. And it's impossible to do that. It just doesn't work with life. We can't do it. So how then should we live? How then should we live our lives? Well, James, practical as ever, understanding I've no knowledge of what tomorrow holds, understanding that I've no assurance of a long life, says in verse 15, instead, this is what you ought to say. So let's see what James urges us to say. This is what you ought to say. What does he say? Well, the first thing that I want to say, bring to you from these little verses is this. There is a will I need to respect, and that will guard us against pride. A will I need to respect, and that will guard me against pride. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, you will live or do this or that. Now, what James is not encouraging us to do is if we've got through our life with this constant expression, if the Lord wills, a kind of mantra that we would call out, this glib, meaningless expression, if the Lord wills. And we really don't understand or know what that means. What James is really urging us is to have a sincere appreciation of God's sovereign control of our lives and of his specific will for our lives. So what is the Christian response to life tonight? Well, it's not to be terrorized by fear. It's not to be paralyzed by inaction about the uncertainty of the future, but it is to commit our lives and plans into the hands of a God who always knows and works out his purpose for our lives. There's a will that I need to respect. If it's the Lord's will, I will do this or that. But secondly, I want to encourage you to think about this. There is a destiny I need to remember, and that will guard me from presumption. That will guard me from presumption. Because shot through the whole of James chapter 4 is the pride of individuals, the pride of human beings, men and women, who think they've got life worked out. And James is saying there's a destiny to which we're all heading. And that very thought, that very truth, will guard me against presumption. And the third thing that James urges us to appreciate is this. There is a life I need to realise. There's a life I need to realise. And it will guard me against procrastination. You see what James is saying? If it's the Lord's will, we will do this or that. And that's a tremendous way to live our lives. Let me introduce you to someone I think some of you might have heard of. His name is Lawrence Walters. Now, Lawrence Walters, let me tell you something about this guy, Lawrence Walters, from San Pedro, California. Sometime in early 1982, Lawrence is sitting outside his back door, and he's sitting thinking to himself, and here's what he thinks to himself. Enough is enough. What I need is a little adventure. I'm tired of just sitting around. So on July the 2nd, 1982, Lawrence fills 42 weather balloons with helium, ties them to his lawn chair, and takes off. That's the lawn chair he used. Maybe not the very one, but it's the exact replica. That's the lawn chair he used. He took off, armed only with a pellet gun to deal with the elevation. And before he knew it, he's 15,000 feet high in the air. I want you to stop for a minute. And I want you to think about the Northwest Airlines pilot who radios to the town and says, there's a guy floating across the sky on a lawn chair. They must have thought he was nuts instead of Lawrence Walters. Shoots the pellet guns in some of the balloons, and 45 minutes after his flight is over, he comes down in Long Beach, California. He's immediately arrested because he's violated airspace. He becomes a bit of an instant celebrity, this Lawrence. And people say to him, Lawrence, why did you do it? Why did you do it? Here's Lawrence's response. People ask me that all the time. I just had to do something. I just couldn't sit around any longer. Wow. Did you hear that? I just couldn't sit around any longer. How sad is that? that this precious gift that we've been given called life, and we just sit around. Can't do it. I need to do something to make this life interesting and exciting. Do you know, one of my heroes is a guy called Jim Elliot, who went with some of his friends in the 1950s to the Auca Indians of Ecuador to take the gospel to them. And as a young man at university, Jim Elliot wrote a journal that is a treasure, or at least I think it's a treasure. And there's a lot of things he says in that journal that I love, but here's one of the things that Jim Elliot said in his journal. Wherever you are, be all there. Isn't that an amazing statement? Lawrence, I just have to do something. Jim, wherever you are, be all there. And he said later in his journal, live to the hilt every situation you believe to be the will of God. That's a great way to live your life. Live it. Live it. Understand that your life is a trust. What are you doing with it? What are you doing with your life? Is it slipping through your fingers? Are you trying to capture your breath, as it were, and trying to bottle it, trying to hold on to what you just cannot get a hold of? Or are you treasuring it? And are you using it to maximum advantage to the glory of God? Your life is a trust. And your life, and this is my final thought, your life is an appointment. Your life is an appointment. Life has been given to you and me for the purpose of glorifying God. Life has been given to us so that we might encounter the living God. Life is an appointment with Christ. And the Bible says, now is the expected time. Do you know, I don't know all of you, but I'm saying to you tonight, now is the expected time. God has given you this moment, and it's only this moment, that you might come to know His Son, Jesus Christ. And it might be your accepted time tonight for that reality. I pray to God it is. What is your life? If you're a believer, you're a child of God, you belong to the kingdom of God, you've been entrusted with the mission of God, and all to the glory of God. That's your life. Treasure it, and believe it, and use it for His honour and His glory. Amen.